Hey everybody, this is Perch. So what's your product? If you're a comic publisher, in theory, your product is comics. Your customer are retailers. Their customer are readers. In a B2B2C world, you have to care about both. As a publisher and a creator of the comics, your product has to get through one channel in order to ultimately get through the other. If you fail in reaching the hearts and minds and, attractiveness of a product to the end consumer, the retailers will order less of your product. You can do things to excite the retailers. You can create incentive programs. You can do variant cover, 50 to 1 schemes. You can do a lot of different things that will make it attractive for the retailer to order your product. And that's a good idea. But at the end of the day, the end consumer is your customer. If you disenfranchise them, if you do not give them a product they want to buy for whatever reason, too difficult to obtain, too expensive to buy, or the content is not meeting the needs of what the audience wants, that's a problem. The comics market is a unique and in some cases terrible market. What I mean by that is it's highly based on patterns of behavior that are not the healthiest. Collector mentality is a tough thing to market to. If you look at other businesses, people know it's a tricky one. Because the reality is you have different triggers of purchasing behavior that are sometimes harder to spot. Somebody who is a collector will keep buying a product they don't like simply to complete a collection or because they're in the habit of doing so. Why that's dangerous is that you can't predict accurately the jumping off moment. It could be based on a number of factors, but it's very hard as a producer of a product to know exactly what those factors are, when they will hit, who they will hit, and thus you have a bit of a disadvantage. On one hand, it's great to get repeat purchasing. A lot of companies strive and are desperate for it, but you need to understand the jumping off point. I'll give you an example. In the world of software, where you have subscriptions, companies know that if they do not innovate and introduce features in an appropriate, timely way, then their product becomes stale. People will stop subscribing to it. If a competitor comes along and offers a faster, more efficient, better piece of software, then there's a threat of people moving from your product to theirs. In comics, you don't have exactly that same problem. People who are buying Spider-Man may jump off Spider-Man, certainly if the creative team is one they don't like. But because of the collector mentality, they're also just as likely to wait it through until there's a change, particularly if the comic publisher has signaled that they change often. And the big two have. So what is the product? The product is a comic book. What the product isn't is politics. Now, people in comics and on this channel and other places on social media talk about politics a lot, frankly, too much. And to be clear, I am not talking about politics in the way that we normally talk about. I'm not talking about Republicans or Democrats. I'm not talking about conservative or liberal. I'm not talking about socialist people. I'm not talking about those type of politics. I'm talking about intercompany drama, the kind of stuff that you might see based on, whatever company you're working for. I'm talking about the idea of kissing up to the boss or changing the numbers slightly so it presents a better picture and might put you at an advantage over a coworker who you're trying to get a promotion over. I'm talking about those type of politics. What's troubling or frustrating is that as you talk to people in the industry, as I have during interviews or on the phone or in a number of places, what you get a common story of is that there are an increased amount of politics going on behind the scenes at places like Marvel. Now, Marvel's in a unique spot. They are slowly but surely getting absorbed into Disney. The company is trying to figure out exactly what to do with them. There's been a lot of change at Disney over the years where their publishing and licensing departments have are indicated. You've got Disney Press that has changed dramatically. You have licensing deals where the structure of those deals is much different today than it was 10 years ago. And you have Marvel sitting there as something that in theory is feeding the movies, but the movies aren't quite as red hot as they used to be. And the comic division is sometimes seen as marketing, it's sometimes seen as a loss leader, it's sometimes seen as a content farm, although that last one is really, at this point, more or less in the rear view mirror. Companies are not looking at Marvel. Disney is not looking at Marvel that way anymore. If you look at their movies, they're taking less and less inspiration from the comics. Certainly, some of the basic character sketches and people who come up, but it's heavily rewritten by the time it gets to the movie. It's not like the early days of we're going to adapt stories like Civil War and do it in kind of in our own fashion. It's much more distant from that. There wasn't a Ant-Man Quantumania comic before that movie came out, or a heavy story they drew upon. I think as an aside, we often point to things and say, "Well, no, there's this background character here that has this reference in this comic." Yeah, there's plenty of Easter eggs, and there's plenty of small moments, and there's even plenty of character designs that make it in. But in terms of the broad story, not really, not anymore. So, what does it mean if your product shifts from comics to politics? And I think in this company, in Marvel in particular, but it can easily happen in a lot of big companies. The number one thing, the main thing that people think about when they come into the office or they log into the computer or they think about what they have to do during the day, is it I need to get my product out? Is it I need to do some research on what the competition is doing? Is it I need to contemplate some different, pricing models or ways to kind of manufacture or distribute, or is it logistical to your product? Is it creative to your product? Or is it more about who you're talking to? Is it more about who sent you a DM? Is it more about a piece of gossip that you heard? Is it more about this editor got this gig and you want it? Is it more about you heard a certain creative team was assigned to a book, but you know some of the people involved and you might be able to go behind the scenes, stab somebody in the back and get that book for yourself? Is that the product? I'm using the word product in little air quotes here. Is that what's going on? And increasingly, if people's talk is to be believed, that is the main thing. That is the thing that people are waking up and doing. And who knows? It may absolutely not be the case. Or maybe a few disgruntled people that are talking to me, certainly possible. It may not be indicative of the full company, but there are at least some indications that maybe that is what's going on. Because when you look at a lineup that feels lackluster, when you look at solicitations in a catalog that are, eh, you know, at times grossly inaccurate, at other times feels like the minimal amount of work possible went in to do this. And keep in mind, the reason why solicitations are important is that is the tip of the spear. That is what the retailers are looking at in order to buy the comics. But if you have a level of apathy towards your product, and if you believe that, hey, people are just going to order what they order, why are you putting so much time into this? Then, yeah, the solicitations get pretty weak, get pretty generic, do not have the same impact or not the same hook that they are. If you want an example of a stark difference in quality, and I'm not just talking about the words that are written there, check out DC solicitations versus Marvel's. I am not saying, and I'd be absurd to say so, that DC is doing an amazing job here. I think there is a lot of work that can be done on the marketing of the comics and the solicitations that are done. If anything, I would say DC solicitations get like a C- level grade. But Marvel's are just not only are they creatively poor, images appear for the wrong comics on a regular basis. Creators are misspelled or not listed at all. Pricing is just factually wrong. Retailers have to submit questions every month. It's not just that, hey, there's some problems here or there. It's there are major factual errors, things that have nothing to do with the creative of inside the comic. Things like misspellings of the word, things like sentences that just end. There's a comic that says, and then what can happen? And then there's just a period. And it doesn't, what can happen next? What could happen then? It doesn't actually make any sense. The words that are on the page. This sloppiness indicates that it's just not a priority. And if that is your number one approach and reach out to your first customer, the retailer, what does that say about where your attention is? And then when you hear the rumors and you hear people say things like, this person's just kind of fighting for this job, or this person's trying to knife this person in the back to get this book, or this editor was picked over this other person, but they're not qualified at all to do this job. Then you start to ask yourself, like, okay, so the talk coming out of this company is about intercompany politics. Again, not Republican Democrat politics. I swear to God, please don't be the guy in the comments who takes it that direction. I'm talking about just the basic get shit done aspect of the company. And if people are prioritizing, who's getting what? This, by the way, for what it's worth, I would say, to be fair, but it really isn't acceptable in any case. When companies are facing uncertainty, and when you do have situations where, a larger owner or corporation is thinking about a consolidation or reorg or shift, it's not unusual for politics to suddenly blossom. And they appear to have done just that. But um, you still have to keep your product your product. Your product is comics. Your customer is the retailer and the end fan or consumer. If that is the number one thing you wake up every day doing, then you don't worry about if Nick Lowe sabotaged your pitch. You don't worry if a book that, is meant to be in his office is actually in Brevort's office because you're doing an inner crossover using a Spider-Man character in it for 4 issues. You get to a place where these are not the right things to focus on. And for what it's worth, uh, I'll throw 2 more examples out for you. Number 1, you're seeing Jed McKay do a lot more of leaning in, doing the interviews, writing the marketing, kind of getting involved more than others. Why is he so front and center on so much? That man is hustling. So good for him, by the way. He deserves the credit he gets. But if you look at other books, it is not the responsibility of just the writer to be doing all this stuff. The editor and assistant editors and others are much more involved. But for some reason, McKay is leading the charge in certain lineups. Go take a look. The other factor is simply, look, based on the quality of what we're seeing, you don't have the high moral ground to be messing around with this stuff. If your product was exemplary, if you did not have spelling errors in your solicitations, if you didn't have kind of basic flaws there, you could claim a lot of things and you can do a lot of things. But when you have those problems, then your high moral ground to say you're the leader of the industry evaporates. Your product is comics. Thanks for listening.